It has emerged that the number of residential tenants classified as squatters has progressively increased in South Africa in the past decade. According to a TPN Credit Bureau report, these tenants are defined as having not paid 3 consecutive months of rent and continued to occupy the property in the 4th month. TPN's Waldo joins us now for this discussion. Thank you so much for your time, Waldo. A concerning number there, but we are talking about tenants who are not in good standing. Let's talk about those numbers.
Good morning to me, and thank you for having me. Yes, it's the first quarter of this year has showed some concerning stats. Tenants in good standing, and we classified those of tenants that's paid the rental in full at the end of the month, had a slight decrease from the previous year's quarter 4 to this year. It is still round about just above the 80% mark, meaning that 2 out of 10 tenants are not making their payments. But we starting to see a concerning decline, especially around the rental bracket below 3,000. They haven't broken the 70% mark yet, meaning that 3 out of 10 tenants are still not able to make rental payments at the end of the month.
I also note in the report that this picture is expected to worsen. Talk to us about the contributing factors.
So there's a couple of contributing factors. I think the one that's making the biggest headlines is, of course, inflation, and that is fueled by the increase in petrol prices, food prices. And at the end, the consumer is under huge pressure. Coming out of the pandemic, we saw massive job losses. People are just not able to make payment. What we have seen, however, in the upside is that people are trying to make payments. So our partial payments have increased a little bit. But the long-term view is that we will see an increase in demand for rental properties as interest rates continue to increase. People are delaying their purchasing decision or entering the bond market when there's huge uncertainty about what the interest rates will be doing in the foreseeable future. So there will be an increase in demand, and of course we will start seeing higher escalations coming through on rentals as landlords and property owners are trying to recoup some of them expenses that's passed on through repairs and maintenance, but also the massive increases in terms of rates and taxes, and then we're also looking at utilities, which will then further place a consumer under pressure.
All these dynamics, of course, change the trajectory, really, of trends that we are seeing in the property or residential property space. What exactly is it indicating towards? Because generally, consumers are cash-strapped and overburdened.
Yes, they are. And as you said at the beginning, we've, over the past decade, saw a upward trend in the number of tenants that squat. And as you rightfully said, it's people that's not paid any rental for 3 months and in the 4th month is still in occupation. And we can really classify those into 2 groups. The one is those that is abusing the system. Therefore, they're recurring offenders in the environment, so they would move from property to property trying to stay within it as long as possible. But that's a very, very small number. Then the other part is those that is really struggling to make ends meet. But traditionally, we see that tenants will reach out to their landlords and start a conversation should they fall into hard times. And they traditionally would vacate the property and then move in with, family or friends, so that they provide the opportunity for the landlord to then rent out the property. But this increasing trend is kind of in line with what we've seen with our GDP growth and also our unemployment that continues rising, really putting a massive strain on the consumers and the ability to pay rent at the end of the month.
Well, here's the tricky part. As a landlord, how do you navigate a sensitive space where a tenant is unable to pay, or maybe you find out that they are a repeat offender and abuser of the system, as you rightfully said earlier on? How does one deal with this?
Well, I think the first step is to ensure that you have a lease agreement in place that covers you. Very, very important that you start off the relationship with a correct lease. Make sure that you take decisive action. So as soon as you start seeing the tenant falling into arrears, open communication, speak to them, reach out to them, and then make sure that you send the necessary documentation, letters of demand, letters of cancellation, on time, so that you can start the process as quickly as possible. Only 4 out of 1,000 tenants, or just over 4 out of 1,000 tenants, are classified as squatting. So most people are moving out if they can't afford it. So in most cases, when you reach that point, make sure that your documentation is correct. And then we always advise landlords, please make sure that you keep a good relationship, open communication. You will very quickly understand if this person is going to abuse the system, and should you have the right lease agreement and send through the right documentation, get the right legal advice and start the eviction process as quickly as possible.
Interesting, and as a follow-up to that question, I'm interested to find out if there is a process of maybe blacklisting tenants who are abusive to this particular system.
To me, that's exactly why TPN was created 22 years ago, is for the community of landlords and property managers to check a tenant before they actually provide them with occupation of the property. So should you have repeat offenders, by doing a credit check with us, you would very quickly understand if this person is abusing the system. Have they done it in the past? And we provide you with a 5-year view. So you would very quickly understand what this potential tenant intention is. And you would also very quickly understand if it's just going through hard times, so therefore some of the other payments on their credit cards, their credit debt repayment has fallen behind for a couple of months, then you know it's just for a short-term period. But we've created this specific credit bureau and collecting the data over all these years to exactly protect both the landlord as well as managing agents from having these repeat offenders taking occupation of property.
At least there's recourse, an unfortunate situation in tough economic times. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. That is Waldo from TPN Credit Bureau talking to us this morning about the report into the residential property space, and it's indicating that the number of squatters has increased in the country.